the state of cloud use in for, at least for ASEAN countries, and they represent different stages of development. You have Singapore, which is very developed. Then you have the Philippines, which is a middle income country. Then you have Vietnam, which is catching up. But we know that from 2000 to 2010, Vietnam made a giant leap in its ICT. And then you have Myanmar, which, as we know, the big story in Myanmar was a few years ago, a SIM card was $2,000. And then once the government opened Myanmar to telcos Ooredoo and Telenor and built its backbone, today you can get a SIM card for under $5. And you have practically 100% mobile penetration now in Myanmar. So what is exciting about the future is we have a tool. When we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, what we really mean is that we have democratized computing power so that anybody, anywhere with connectivity and a device should be able to access knowledge, should be able to communicate ideas, should be able to transact commercially and compete and sell and communicate or do what it is that you want to do. So let me just now stop there and then answer questions.
We have always been compared to Vietnam. Even earlier, you made a comparison in terms of number of cell sites.
Yeah.
So would you say that the key is more active involvement for the government in ICT in terms of
Yes.
helping develop
Yes.
the infrastructure?
So that's a very good question. Does the active involvement of government improve the state of ICT or access to technology? And the answer to that is it depends on what the government does. So if you look at two governments, for example, where there is quite active government involvement, you look at Singapore, which takes a whole of government approach. So they have a campaign for a smart nation. When Singapore talks about a smart nation, it's really a smart city because they're just one city. But they talk about whole of government, meaning that they coordinate with one another. There is a body called GovTech that focuses on developing applications and solutions powered by the cloud for the government and its citizens. So when I pay my taxes in Singapore, I've lived there for 9 years, it takes me 5 minutes. But as a US citizen, I also have to pay American taxes. That takes me 2 months to process everything. So the speed, so in Singapore, again, because it is a coordinated, kind of tightly controlled government in the sense that they agree and then they carry out the policy with discipline. And if you look at their connectivity, they have excellent connectivity, but they even have a TV white space framework. You usually think about TV white space based connectivity for poorer countries or for rural areas where you're going to use television spectrum to give people connectivity to the internet. But Singapore even has that as a backup. And then when you talk about Vietnam, in 2000, the Communist Party and the government of Vietnam really sat down and came up with a very concentrated plan, a strategic 10-year plan for Vietnam to catch up because it was worried about its own economic development. So if you look at the numbers from 2000 to 2010, again, this is a government with focus, and in a way, if you think about it, it's one party, and so maybe it's less complex in that sense. But the one-party system alone doesn't guarantee you're going to have a great ICT policy. It's really the discipline in implementation, where you line up the finance department, the ICT department, and in the Philippines, the ICT department is only, I think, just a year old or just over a year old. So you have to give this department time to grow and carry out its mandate. So again, yes, the government can play an extremely important role because in terms of building infrastructure, leadership, policy, access. Some governments, for example, have requirements that will make it harder for people and businesses to access all the innovation that cloud enables. So one such policy is when they say all data must reside within the borders of the country, within the physical borders of the country. Some governments have that kind of policy, and that's not very helpful because the beauty of the internet and cloud computing is precisely that we are breaking down the geographic barriers so that we can communicate, transact, share knowledge a lot more easily, more quickly, and at less cost.
Excuse me. You mentioned about how long it takes you to pay your taxes in Singapore and the US, 2 months, and in
And
Singapore,
I have to
5
hire
minutes,
a
2 minutes.
professional
Mm.
accountant for my American taxes. In Singapore, it's literally 5
yes,
minutes.
and Vietnam also, its ICT industry is going well. But would you say that it is the kind of government that would push forward fast and quick any
Yeah.
ICT program? I would not like to say dictatorial government or democracy or what.
Yeah.
Would you say some kind of relations with that? In how
So-
would you move your country forward?
Malaysia also has very good ICT,
Yeah.
and Malaysia has more of a multi-party, system. So without commenting on the different political systems, I think the fundamental question is quality of leadership. I think you have to shift the discussion. What is the quality of leadership? Is the government able to define its vision for technology and how technology can empower the government itself to deliver better services like business permits or taxation? So is the government able to define that vision? That's the first thing. Secondly, is the government able to line up the necessary support? And it's not all government. You have to realize that the private sector plays a big and important role in investing in the infrastructure, in educating people, and even nonprofits also play a big role. They can also deliver digital literacy, education. They can help people understand how to use the internet more safely. So it's that whole ecosystem. And then third is your disciplined execution. So when you think about those things, that's the answer to what role should the government play. So there is no black and white answer where yes, government should be in charge of ICT and can do everything, or no, government should be very involved. It's really the quality of leadership, the clarity of the vision, connectivity on EDSA. Because as you know, EDSA is one of the most clogged arteries, right? And at the end of the day, it is a service. I used to, many years ago when I lived in Manila in the early 80s, and I lived in Guadalupe, Makati, and my school was UP Diliman, and just standing there for hours or being in the bus for hours, and to think that today you don't have to be rich, you can get some connectivity with your phone while you're waiting for your bus is a great system. And those small successes are important because it demonstrates to the people that what you're doing is actually for them, and it helps generate more support for what you are doing as a government.
Do you have those qualities, ma'am, Filipino leaders?
I think the Filipino leadership has the qualities that are needed, but at the same time, I understand they also have challenges. So it's complex and it's difficult. That's why it is important that the leaders are able to simplify the pathway forward and again execute in a disciplined way. You don't have to solve all your problems all at once, and that goes true for technology as well. So someone earlier talked about the thousands of islands in the Philippines. So if you think, for example, about access to quality education, the government doesn't have to solve all the problems of all the provinces and all the towns and all the municipalities. What you need to do is select 10 mayors and 20 barangays. I don't know, you say, let us work together in a 1-year time frame to bring cloud-powered education to your 10 cities or your 20 barangays and focus on that. So that's what's important. You focus on it, you implement it, and then you learn. Does it work? Does it not work? And then if it works, what would be exciting is we scale it now from 10 cities, 30, right? Work with a league of cities. So I think that's really how it's almost an engineering problem. And the politics of it is for people to agree, enough leaders to agree on that vision and then bring in the partners. But it is an engineering problem. I once met Lee Kuan Yew when I first moved to Singapore, and I had brought a team of Russian government officials to meet him because I had lived in Russia and spoke Russian. And I asked him, what was his leadership secret? And he said, I think like an engineer. He said, I am not a poet. And he said, even if I wanted to do poetry, I couldn't do it. I am an engineer. I want to take problems and I want to solve them. So we have to apply that mindset.
Engineer.
The mindset is an engineering mindset.
So people must cross party lines. If it's an engineering mindset, you
Yes.
throw away the politics.
Yeah, maybe you can't throw away politics, but it is the getting to yes. How do we get to yes? Because take a picture of 100 poor Filipino children, and if you just show that, I don't know that there's a politician who wouldn't say these children should have dreams and these children should have an opportunity to be educated. You can be sure that all of them will be successful, but if you look at the faces of these children, wouldn't everybody agree that, hey, a child in Cotabato, a child in Cebu, a child in Negros, that these children should have a more or less level playing field on which they can build their dreams, develop their skills, and grow up as productive citizens of the country.
Is there a lack? Do you think there's a lack of competition in the telco space locally?
For the telcos, I am not expert enough on your telco laws, but again, there I think you need to have that conversation between telcos, government, and who else needs to be in that conversation to ask what can be improved. Competition is always welcome. I think if you look at China, for example, why was China able to lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty? It's because they opened the market, they had competition. And there are many ways to do that. Sometimes you have the appearance of competition when you don't have real competition. And so I think that conversation has to take place here in the Philippines rather than someone like me who doesn't know the local context of the laws on telcos to really talk about it, because I don't have the expertise.
You're both with the academia and the industry.
So I'm primarily with Microsoft as the regional director for corporate, external, and legal affairs, and I oversee 15 markets, the 10 ASEAN markets, and then Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and Maldives. At the same time, I am an adjunct professor at the Lee Kuan Yew School, and that's by virtue of the fact that I was the former vice dean there. And what's really exciting for Microsoft is that we believe in research. We believe in knowledge. We spend over $1 billion in research every year, and we believe in policy. In my entire experience in the last 5 years that I've worked in Microsoft, I have seen governments in this region pass really great policy. And I've also seen governments pass really poor policy. And the most exciting policy in the Philippines that I see today is, maybe two of them, your national broadband. I think that's terrific. And then the other one is your cloud first policy for government. In February of this year, the DICT announced this policy that the government in the Philippines should go cloud first in order to save costs, in order to have more computing power, in order to have greater cybersecurity. I think that is the right policy. And Microsoft is so excited about that. We've been knocking on the door of DICT because we want to be your partner. All of the things that are important to government, the faster delivery of services, availability on mobile devices, and most of all, security. Because if your platform is not secure, your people will be afraid to use it. So that's a very big story for us, is that we are very focused on keeping our cloud secure. Our cloud is called Azure. So Azure, the security of Azure is very, very important.
Yes, ma'am, you mentioned about cloud security. So, do you think cloud computing is moving as fast as security is moving also? I think everyone knows what happened in recent months about hackings,
Yes.
power utilities, energy, water, banks.
They have, you know, the problem of cybercrime. So you're talking about cybercrime. It is a problem that I think is costing us, you know, $500 billion a year in the world of lost productivity, lost time, basically lost finances as well. If you remember the Bank of Bangladesh hack last year, or the hack of Sony Corporation or Target, the big department store in the United States. And let me make a few very, very important points. First is that cybercrime is here to stay, and it is more powerful, it is more sophisticated, it is organized crime. It happens every day. The bad guy does not sleep. That's the first important point I want to make. The second important point I want to make is that there is no magic bullet. There is no magic solution.
No silver bullet.
There's no silver bullet, and we have to balance between security and innovation because we don't want to return to the 19th century of technology. So we have to balance between security and innovation. And the third thing that I want to say is that as a company, Microsoft is so focused on security, and how do we do that? First is physical security. So when we talk about the cloud, we are talking about these giant data centers that are now in over 25 regions of the world for us, for Microsoft. And we have several of these in Singapore. These giant data centers have almost military installation level of physical security. They have firefighting capability. They have their own energy supply. There's multiple levels of biometrics just to get in there because we want to protect the data of our customers. We want to make sure our customers, whether they are banks or governments, can sleep at night knowing nobody it'll be very hard to steal their data. So physical security. Second is virtual security because Microsoft has a big footprint in the world of ICT. We look at billions of bits of data all the time, every day, 24/7, 365 days a year. And we have a Microsoft Intelligence Graph where we are constantly scanning what attacks are happening where, what malware or malicious software is spreading, and then we try to make sure that we can respond as fast as we can to detect, protect, and then respond to these threats. That's the second thing we do. And we even go after, together with law enforcement, we work with the Interpol, Europol, and FBI to really take down some of the most pernicious botnets. Botnets are armies of zombie computers that are used to perpetrate cybercrime. So we work directly with law enforcement. We are only a company, but we work with law enforcement to take down some of the most pernicious cyber criminals. And then the third thing that we do is we educate and train on good cyber hygiene and the protection of intellectual property. So don't use pirated software. Don't click every attachment on a suspicious looking email. Don't download from the internet from sites that you don't know. So I'm sorry, I think we have to go back.